deep breaths. This is how we alert our body and our mind that we are giving ourselves over to taking a pause, taking a few moments to let ourselves simply be. So take a few deep breaths and we allow ourselves to feel comfortable and safe and comfortable in this place at this time in these chairs with this community of people. We open our hearts and our minds to listen deeply, to see one another as the light of the world, to listen to one another attentively, kindly, compassionately. When we do not agree, to continue to hold one another in a heart of love and kindness and appreciation of the capacities of the human spirit to do what is most needed in every moment, to be the change we want to see in the world, to be a part of the transformative presence. To be a part of the transformative presence known by many names. If you feel comfortable, just speak out one of those names now. Spirit. Love. Love. To be the presence of love right now. We don't have to pause and read a book. We don't have to pause to take a class on how to be the love present. It's all innately within us. As close as a breath. We can be in anger and confusion in one moment and take a deep breath. Return to the core, the center of peace. And from that place we can see more clearly what is ours to do and say and be. What is our response in each moment? It helps to create peace, kindness. This is the curriculum. And we have everything we need within to fulfill that curriculum, to be the light of the world. So as the light of the world, I ask you now to pause and hold in your consciousness of prayer all the places in the world, the people that you're thinking of and holding in prayer, holding them in the light, holding places on this planet in the light. So many different levels of struggle and suffering. So we hold in our consciousness this idea that all human beings have the capacity for love and wisdom and kindness and empathy. That's what the light of the world does. If you feel comfortable doing so, speak out a name or a place that you're holding in this consciousness of light. Places on this planet where there is struggle between different cultures, religions, different communities, where there is war, where there are people living in great fear. We hold our human family in the light. We hold all world leaders in a consciousness of prayer, knowing that they have the capacity to make decisions from a place of wanting a world that works for all. We give thanks for this capacity to live as spiritualized human beings regardless of culture, religion, skin color, political beliefs. We hold our human family in the light, and our planet in the light, all life. What a remarkable experience this is. We give thanks for healing and renewal and transformation on every level. For us, our human family, and for all of life. And we say, so it is, and so we let it be. Namaste. And we also say amen on women and on children. And let there be light. There we go. Hello, wow. The audience filled up just a little bit more. It's a magical thing. The lights go out, people appear. Wow. You know what I'm giving thanks for? I'm already giving thanks for the windows in the new sanctuary, where we'll have natural light filtering in. I give such great thanks for this place, this building that has held us. We're been like a chrysalis held in here, loving energy. So many people passed through these doors, been in this place, healing, laughter, tears, holding one another, gathering in circles, praying together, celebrating together. I just give such great thanks for all of the blessings this building has held for us. Amen. And I'm giving thanks for all the blessings that our new location is already preparing for us, including windows. Oh, so we just had a very sacred meditation, and I want to continue it. We don't want to leave that sacred energy too soon. So I want to continue with a Jewish Buddhist meditation. Is that okay? Yeah. Do we have any Jewish Buddhists among us? Okay. Here I am. Okay. So this is a Jewish Buddhist meditation. Take a deep breath. If there is no self, whose arthritis is this? Be here now, be someplace else later. Is that so complicated? Drink tea and nourish life with the first sip, joy with the second sip, peace with the third sip, and with the fourth, a Danish. Wherever you go, there you are. Your luggage is another story. Accept misfortune as a blessing. Do not wish for perfect health or a life without problems. What would you talk about? There is no escaping karma. In a previous life, you never called, you never wrote, you never visited, and whose fault was that? If this is offensive to anybody, please forgive me. Okay. Zen is not easy. It takes effort to attain nothingness. And then what do you have? Bhaktis. The Tao does not speak. The Tao does not blame. The Tao does not take sides. The Tao has no expectations. The Tao demands nothing of others. The Tao is not Jewish or Italian. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Forget this, and attaining enlightenment will be the least of your problems. Let your mind be as a floating cloud. Let your stillness be as a wooded glen. And sit up straight. You'll never meet the Buddha with such rounded shoulders. Deep inside you are 10,000 flowers. Each flower blossoms 10,000 times. Each blossom has 10,000 petals. You might want to see a specialist. And lastly, be aware of your body. Be aware of your perceptions. Keep in mind that not every physical sensation is a symptom of terminal illness. Okay, yes, there we go. So if you don't hear anything else today, you heard that. So today we're talking about the supreme emotion. After service, we're going to do Connect the Dots. We've had a few Sundays of other things going on, but we'll do Connect the Dots today. So this idea, the supreme emotion, comes from this book that we're doing on Tuesday nights, The Ethics of the New Millennium. Interestingly enough, the Dalai Lama wrote, I keep wanting to call him Dalai. The Dalai Lama wrote this book in 1999. And it's so current with what we're dealing with today. But it's interesting, he wrote this, a few years before 9/11. And the truth is, I don't even remember seeing this book when it came out. And so rediscovering it for the first time has been a really wonderful experience for me. So he talks about the supreme emotion, and last week we talked about love, and you might think that the supreme emotion is love, right? I mean, that's the go-to answer. What's love got to do with it? Everything. Dalai Lama has taken this word love and broken it down into the different aspects of how love shows up. And according to the Dalai Lama, who I respect, what an example of someone who has lost, in quotes, so much, his homeland, Tibet, the monasteries, brother monks, brother nuns, or sister nuns. There's religious relics that have been lost, holy scriptures. He's lost so much in so many ways, and yet he's able to keep opening to do what he's to do in this world we're living in. And the irony is, if he hadn't have fled Tibet, if he hadn't gone into exile, we, the Western culture, would not have had him in the world as a teacher in the way we have. So he says, in the Tibetan language, the word for empathy, which he calls the supreme emotion, it translates as the inability to bear the sight of another's suffering. That's a huge level of empathy. Somebody in the class the other night said, well, you don't want to have too much empathy. And I know where she's coming from. All of you have been trained in some healing modality. There's always an admonition to feel, intuit, empathically sense the other person's situation, their journey, their experience, and do not go so deeply into it that you lose your own center or your own sense of well-being. Does that make sense? So empathy with balance is what we're talking about. So Dalai Lama suggests that living from an ethical core of empathy can save the world, as we hold the well-being of others as important as our own. So it's not new, it's actually very simple, but what some of us were shocked to discover, it's not so easy to do. It's at the core of every religious and spiritual teaching. What is it? Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Dalai Lama updates it a little bit. Hold the well-being of others as important as your own. Now that's easy to do for the grandkids, the kids, the close family members, your heart family, the people you care about. Dalai Lama suggests, what does he know? He suggests that the ultimate supreme emotion that helps to save the world is when we have as much empathy for the stranger as we do for ourselves. So if you want to know what the curriculum is, that's a clue.
That actually is easy to do if you really come into the understanding of what that means. That's easy to do because we're all here on the same journey with all the pitfalls and everything else. How can you not have empathy for your fellow human beings?
So how can we not have empathy for our fellow human beings? Well, let's see if we can answer that. So last week we talked about the imaginal cells of the butterfly, the caterpillar. That the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis and goes through the sacred ceremony of being in the goop. Many of us can attest that being in the goop brings resurrection. After the goop, there's the butterfly. But in the goop, these imaginal cells say, we know you thought you were a caterpillar, but you're actually going to be a butterfly. Well, that we propose the same things happening in us as we watch and participate in our own evolution of consciousness. We're also proposing that we're the imaginal cells in the world to help and support one another in remembering who we are. So, in the stage of being the imaginal cell, we're pondering outrageously wonderful possibilities for human consciousness. I put this slide up again because I just love to say it. And it's fun to say really fast. So let's do that. Pondering outrageously wonderful possibilities for human consciousness. Isn't that fun? But that's actually what we're called to do right now. Because here's something that I've discovered, I've observed about the human family and me, is that I'm not always pondering wonderful possibilities for the human family. Sometimes I'm looking at the evidence and going, oy vey, how are we going to get out of this pickle? So the call is to ponder wonderful possibilities for human consciousness, even if we've never seen it before in the world. So Dalai Lama invites us into a practice of what the Tibetans call sopa, S-O-P-A, which is the courage, the composure of being unperturbed in the face of adversity. It points to a deliberate, reasoned response to strong negative thoughts and emotions. Yes. Jim just said,
Turning the other cheek.
Turning the other cheek. Thank you. Now, in metaphysics, turning the other cheek means look towards another perspective. Widen the frame, to use an old photography. Widen the frame. Dee said the other night in class, from the Course in Miracles, stay above the battlefield. Is that what it was? Stay above the battlefield. Stay in the place of observing, not in reactionary energy. Breathe into the moment of observing. Be the space of equanimity. Is it easy to do? It takes some time. Maybe millions of years. It's the easiest thing there is to do. So now Jim and Paula have both said it's easy. Shall we agree with them?
Yes.
You see, here's the thing. It's going to take a few of us imaginal selves to make a decision that this isn't going to be as hard as we think. Well, holy cow, y'all, we've been practicing for thousands and thousands of years, and that's encoded in our DNA. It's not like we all show up and have to figure out everything from the get-go. It's encoded in our DNA. The wisdom is carried forward. We know that, right? Wisdom is carried forward. I don't have to figure it out every time I incarnate. Uh-oh, now she's talking about reincarnation. Oh, boy. The practice of sopa, he says, can be as hard as driving a donkey uphill, whereas engaging in destructive activities is as easy as rolling boulders downhill. Yes, Michael? Just one second. Boulders are huge, giant rocks.
I thought you said bowlers.
Boulders are huge, giant rocks. You know, one time in Santa Barbara, there was a big storm where David and I used to live, and from the mountains, the mud came flowing down into Santa Barbara. And there were so many things washed down from the mountains, and we could hear the boulders behind our little cottage hitting each other like billiard balls. You know what that is when you play pool? The balls on the pool table? The boulders were hitting each other. And we listened to it all night long. We didn't sleep. Something about boulders hitting each other. Can't sleep. And when we went out the next day in the daylight, the whole creek had been redesigned. Mother Nature is a mighty force. And so much mud from up in the mountains and debris and, I'm afraid some of the animals didn't make it out of the mudslide, so we had carcasses of raccoons and other animals, and so the cleanup was weeks. David got his special little yellow outfit that he wore, his raincoat and his rain pants and his big mud shoes. He loves that. He'll put that on for a little rainstorm. I'm going out into the storm now. He bought that at Santa Barbara when we were having mudslides. And it stank, oh my goodness, it was stinky for weeks. But here's what happens when the boulders are hitting each other and the mud is sliding and things are being rearranged. There's always something good that comes from the stinky mud. Have you noticed that? Right? There's always something. I know we all have these stinky mud stories where life looks like stinky mud, and then at some point you're going, wow, life is so much better now, and it wouldn't have been if it hadn't been for that stinky mud. So we dealt with this cleanup for weeks. And then we started noticing things coming up from the ground that we'd never seen before. Plants that we had no idea what they were. And it turns out these little cottages on this street had at one time been lived in by the servants from the folks who lived out where Oprah lived, on the hill. And so all those people, the cooks and the gardeners and the cleaning people, they lived what they called the working man's road. They lived in these little cottages. And some of those folks brought home cuttings, it seems, from the estates where they were working. And some of their employers were world travelers. So there were things coming up that hadn't probably been seen for years. The people from University of California were coming out to identify what these things were. We had Japanese exotic plants and flowers, and we watched with the most extreme curiosity that whole spring and summer and into the fall. What are we going to see next? From the stinky mud, things are coming up. Things that were planted but had been dormant for a long time. And that's what I feel we're seeing right now. Thank you for asking the question, Michael. Because it feels like boulders are hitting up against each other, doesn't it? And it feels like some stinky mud's happening. And cleanup that has to be done. There's something being revealed.
Can I just say one thing?
I don't know, Paula.
On that note, there's a group on Facebook that popped up this morning, and it's about the ascension, about exactly what Reverend Mark was talking about, the change coming into higher consciousness. But the thing that got me was that it started by young people in their 30s, in their 20s, 30s, 40s. There's a whole group of under people, whatever kind of children you want your name to it. It has like 229,000 people around the world that are in this group of higher consciousness. It's a happening thing, people. It's a happening thing.
Well, it's been confirmed here. Dalai Lama tells this story about when he went to visit Auschwitz. And he was so overcome by seeing the instruments of unkindness. And he stopped to pray. He said, I stopped and prayed, moved profoundly, both for the victims and for the perpetrators. Understanding that just as we all have the capacity to act selflessly out of concern for others' well-being, so do we all have the potential to be murderers and torturers. I vowed never in any way to contribute to such a calamity. Now he calls it the sobering awareness. Most of us in this room have had that awareness. It takes more commitment. It takes more presence. It takes more willingness to give ourselves over to sopa, what he calls, the ability to stay unperturbed in the midst of disturbing events. The ability to stay in equanimity, to stay in the balanced place, even when we empathically, we have the empathy to feel the suffering of the world. You may recall from time to time, I have said, I know why Jesus wept. This is the reason. We reach this point where we have the inability to see suffering of others and not feel something, right? Jesus knew there was going to be some hard stuff to deal. He knew there was going to be mudslides in human consciousness. So Sopa provides us with the strength to resist suffering and protects us from losing compassion even for those who would harm us. It involves a determination to not give in to negative impulses and not return harm for harm. It's the practice of true nonviolence. So this last week was the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King leaving the planet. He brought the message of nonviolence. We're still opening to the message of nonviolence, to not return harm for harm. Simple, may not be as easy as Jim thinks it is for most of us. To turn the other cheek, meaning look for another perspective that can hold some possibilities for peace. Turn the other way. Remember the Sunday we had Dan demonstrate the pivot. Pivot in another direction. Pivot towards another, it's a basketball term because I'm a basketball expert. Pivot towards another direction. So the practice of nonviolence, or what the Dalai Lama calls sopa, requires practicing the antidotes to afflictive emotions. He names these afflictive emotions: anger, pride, greed, lethargy, helplessness and despair, and miserliness. Those are his words for the afflictive emotions. Now in the book, he says, patience opposes anger, and humility opposes pride, and so forth. But I told the class the other night, I don't want to use the word opposes, and Dalai Lama did not ask me to edit his book, but I'm going to let him know that maybe a better word for oppose would be the word Bobby brought to the class the other night, simply counterbalance. That patience counterbalances anger. Simple. Humility counterbalances pride. Contentment counterbalances greed. Perseverance counterbalances lethargy. I love this one. Spirituality and asking for help counterbalances helplessness and despair. How many of us were taught it's a sign of helplessness to ask for help? That's a silly thing. And giving counterbalances Silas Marner syndrome, the miserliness, right? Counterbalance. Here's my symbol for it, the infinity symbol. Patience is also connected with impatience, anger. One moment I'm feeling anger, but I have living within me at the same time patience, compassion, empathy. So I work to be in the balanced place. What the Buddhists call the middle way, the equanimity, the balanced place. It's like, our world has gotten in trouble, especially religious folks. I've known a few of those. And there is a danger that you're against something so much that you start becoming almost like a dictatorial energy, teaching people that if they don't do something a certain way, they're wrong, they're bad, and destined for hell. And that's just plain silliness.
And that energy is not going to change
That energy doesn't change anything. So D. Jones again suggested stay above the battleground, reach for the middle ground, the equanimity, the place of balance. Is that so hard? Self-observation. So here's what I'm discovering for myself, and you guys have probably already discovered this. On all of this kind of stuff, on all of this kind of teaching, on just this one idea of counterbalancing afflictive emotions with the emotions of transformative consciousness. That's the curriculum. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about what's wrong, talking about what needs to be fixed, talking about who needs to be out of office and who needs to be in office. We spend a lot of time talking about who did the bad thing that created all the bad stuff. We spend a lot of time and a lot of energy looking for the culprit and trying to figure out solutions that are on the outside of us. You know, we'll always have legislation, we'll always have laws, we'll always have our Constitution, we have ways of measuring the better way, the best ways to create a world that works for all. But where does the real work have to happen? Because it can't all be through legislation.
Inside yourself.
Inside. It's an inside job. So let's take a deep breath. I want to propose this idea to you. And I have this on good authority. The future is not created yet. The future is not cast in concrete. The future is not created yet. We are creating it. It's coming out of our hearts of creative consciousness. This is where the future comes from. If we're not happy with the storyline, then let's reimagine it. So here's the great thing. This is the great news that I feel is true. The great thing about the day we're living in with so many dilemmas in the world is that we can reimagine it. Because the future isn't created yet. We're creating it with our collective thought.
Ongoing process.
Let's take a deep breath. If the future isn't created yet, then who's it up to? Who should we get to do it for us?
Each and every one of us.
Well, surely there's going to be another Jesus who'll do it for us. No? Wait a minute, Linda, what?
We're all doing it. I'm doing it, you're doing it, everyone is doing it.
Everybody's doing it.
Yes.
So, in other words, I don't have to wait until there's a Jesus person to come back and say, I'll take care of this.
So Jesus was already here.
Jesus was already here.
He didn't go anywhere, he's still here.
Well, he told us to do it the way we're talking about now.
Exactly.
Or
So let's take a deep breath into that.
Some more.
Every great spiritual teacher, without exception, has basically said, you do this stuff too. You do this stuff too. Here's the way I did it. Here's the way I expressed being the light of the world. Here's the way I expressed forgiveness. Here's the way I expressed empathy. Here's the way I expressed wisdom. Here's the way I expressed faith. Now, you do your version of being the light of the world. And yet, we keep waiting for them to take care of it. So here's my proposal. Here's what I think about it too. If I am really the light of the world, if that isn't just a Pollyannish idea, but if I really am the light of the world, how does that look? How does that sound? And if the world really is awakening, What are the possibilities that exist already for us in an awakened world? My curriculum, it seems, is to focus and think more on those things than the things that are so confusing. Stop trying to fix anything and be that expression of the light that you want to see more of in the world. It's simple. The supreme emotion. To sense the journey of another human being. The supreme emotion. To sense the pain or suffering or joy and wonder and love of another human being. Not getting political. It's very interesting to me that these children who are out creating a movement and marching, you know, some people are finding lots of things wrong with what they're doing. I want to hear more applause for kids who believe in the democratic process and have the courage to get out and do the process. They may not agree with what they're doing, but they're doing. They believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. How bizarre is that? So when we start expressing what we feel is possible, it's because you believe in an inner constitution, an inner set of guidelines, an inner kind of coding as the light of the world. It's something that we live from. And if I start moving into despair, I need to ask for help. If I start moving into a dark, bleak place, I need to ask for help. You know, there's a song that we sing. Y'all sang it last Sunday, and y'all sang it the other night at Island Bar and Grill, the midweek church. The Island Bar and Grill where the Pirates were the other night, which is this whole band. And by the way, y'all, you know, all these people in this band have other gigs, jobs, music gigs, and they still show up here. I'm amazed every Sunday. This idea that it's up to us is both frightening and daunting and humbling and profound all at the same time. But it's finally dawned on me after a lot of years of being in this business, being in this work, being in this ministry. By golly, it really is up to us. Who else is it up to? So I must have the marching orders or the work papers already inside of me. I've already got the guidelines and the encoding to know what I'm to do. And so do you. Isn't that profound? See, we can't say anymore, I don't know what to do. The world's in a mess, I don't know what to do. See, that's not true. You can't say that anymore. Turn to somebody and say, you can't say that anymore. Because you do know what to do. You do know what to do. And let's end with that by saying, I do know what to do. I do know what to do. We know what to be. We know what to express. We know how to do it. We've always known. We just weren't revealing it to ourselves. It's the revelation that we've been waiting for. It's the revelation. We don't have to write the whole book again of Revelations. This is the revelation. So simple. So as the band's coming up, let's take a deep breath. And we give thanks for this divine idea that we have this supreme emotion within us. And out of this place, this empathy, this place of concern for others as much as for ourselves, we live out of that. We live out of that place. We live out of that consciousness. How can we go wrong? Everything is meant to work in our favor. The universe is conspiring for our awakening. The universe has our back, and we say, so it is, and so we let it be. Namaste.